Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, my friends. In today's video, we're here to talk a little bit about the history of the rivalry between Capcom and SNK. Now, you may be aware that these days, the modern era, that Capcom and SNK are getting along like old friends. We have Terry Bogard and Mai Shiranui coming to Street Fighter 6. Terry is already out, Mai out soon-ish, hopefully January, right? For the upcoming Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, which launches next year, we have Ken Masters and Chun-Li also joining the game, so lots of cross-promotion. Here we are giving you some of our most signature characters on both sides. And if Terry is the template, well, they've done very well with Terry in terms of paying him his, due respect and all that. So I'm sure Mai's going to be great, and Ken and Chun are both going to be great in City of the Wolves. SNK versus Capcom Chaos got a re-release, and they're re-releasing the Immortal Capcom versus SNK games as well, CVS 1 and 2, sometime next year. So awesome, right? But the thing is, Capcom didn't always play nice with other companies. In fact, there used to be a time where they would take other fighting games to court. That's another story for another day. Maybe we'll cover that sometime down the road. And back in the day, Capcom and SNK were very much more rivals than friends. Maybe not take you to court bad, but they definitely took their pot shots at each other. And a lot of that starts with Dan Hibiki. Dan is a near universally beloved character. I think pretty much just about everyone likes him. But Dan very much started off as a middle finger to SNK. Capcom basically said, since you ripped off our characters, debatably, then we're just going to make fun of them and make them a complete joke in our game, screw you. And of course, SNK didn't take that sitting down either. People talk about Dan, not many people talk about Yuri. So we're going to get into it here, just how it all started, the big old rivalry. The beginnings of Dan Hibiki and then the blow for counter blow with SNK. On social media, I usually post a lot of dumb things like, say, old win quotes, right? And this is sort of what started all this. And I am on Blue Sky now. I finally got browbeat into it. One such comment to a Dan win quote was like, this has to be Photoshop. No way he said it, right? And then I'm like, wow, I guess, a lot of people don't know Dan will go there. So let's dig into it. So Dan got his start in the Street Fighter Alpha series. And unlike, say, a new character in a Street Fighter game, he wasn't exactly very obvious, because as you may see, he's exactly nowhere on the character roster. The only way you could pick Dan was you had to go to random select specifically. On random select, you had to hold start, hit light punch, light kick, heavy punch, medium punch, and you had to do it really, really, really fast. And if you did it all, then you got Dan, and then hey, this is the Dan we all know and love with all the fixins'. Now, come Street Fighter Alpha 2, Dan would graduate from like a gimmick, because he was a hidden boss with very specific requirements and obviously needed the code to play him, to an actual normal playable character just there from the start. And of course from there, Dan would just become a part of our lives. And he would do his funny, weird fireball that wasn't as good as Ryu or Ken. He's got his own version of the uppercut. He's got his own version of the hurricane kicks, right? So is he making fun of Ryu and Ken? Well, no, not really. He's kind of making fun of the other guys on the other side of the fence. So in 1991, that's when Street Fighter 2 came out. In 1992, that's when a lot of other games started coming out. Hey, Street Fighter 2 was effectively a revolution in gaming, so we want to take our own stab at it, right? So 1992 is introducing the Art of Fighting, one of the staple SNK franchises, full of very memorable characters that would go on, and obviously more Art of Fighting games, also in the King of Fighters as well. And of course we have a bunch of our characters in these games, right? Because every game has their own characters. Two of them were Ryo and Robert. Now, Ryo, well, you might mistake him for looking a little bit like someone else, right? A little bit like, say, Ryu. And he's got some similarities, like, hey, can he do the thing? And whoa, he can kind of do the thing. Things that you may have seen Ryu or Ken do every now and then, right? Maybe he's got his own take on some of these, but, you can make a case, hey, you're definitely inspired by our game, right? Now, I'm here to tell you, Ryo is very much his own guy. Like, yes, he is a dude in a karate gi, sure, but he is not Ryu. Ryo is very, very different. Ryo's actually a lot scarier than Ryu in a lot of ways. Over the years, Ryo can just straight up be like a beast in a way like Ryu and Ken cannot, right? And he has his own personality, he has his own storyline, like he is his own character. There's a lot of cosmetic similarities, absolutely, I'll grant it. And back in the 90s, they were a lot more egregious than they are today. But this day and age, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But back in the day, Capcom's kind of like, yeah, this is a big deal and to hell with you. And therefore, we have the creation of Dan. So everything about Dan is to crap on Art of Fighting specifically. And we can see it right here in the look, right? You know, he's got the gi, he's got the undershirt, and that's exactly the look of Ryo, right? Different color, sure, but Ryo has that same kind of gi, you know, the cut off shoulders. He has the undershirt as something, you know, Ken, Ryu, Akuma do not have. And that's very visibly, you know, the style. And Dan has the big ponytail, right? The ponytail is specifically kind of mocking Robert Garcia, who is, if you want to get reductive, the Ken of the Art of Fighting franchise. So basically the entire look is, okay, I'm just mocking your look. And he's pink, well, because it was the 90s. And in the 90s, if you wore pink, you were crazy. Men didn't wear pink, unless you're Bret Hart. Bret Hart was the only exception. Like there's a whole Simpsons episode where Homer goes to the mental asylum because he wore a pink shirt. He just didn't do that stuff in the 90s. Okay, so the base appearance, the base look already sort of ripping on SNK and Art of Fighting, right? And then we have the moves. So in the context of, you know, Street Fighter, the weak, puny fireball, right? So you compare that to anybody else, Ryu, Akuma, Ken, you know, they got cool fireballs. They go all the way across the screen. That's what you want in Street Fighter, right? But old Dan, well, his don't go full screen. And it works on a couple levels. One, obviously in the context of Street Fighter, it just makes you look weak and wimpy to have a fireball that can't go far, right? But that's also sort of how it works with Ryo over the years. Ryo has fireballs that don't necessarily go full screen. You know, they be very strong, but they don't go all the way. In Art of Fighting specifically, you have like an energy bar. And if your energy is full, then hey, your fireball goes all the way. If it's low, then no, you sort of get the Dan style fireball, you know, the one Dan uses to this day, where if it's low, then, well, it doesn't go that far. So that's sort of what Dan's making fun of. The uppercut, well, Dan's uppercut, it's gotten better over the years, but unless you see that white flash in like the alpha games, that's when it's actually invincible. If there's no white flash, then its defensive properties are suspect, and that white flash is quite rare. So basically, hey, because I'm like an Art of Fighting character, I'm not as good as the real characters. And then, hey, Dan Kyaku, right? His very different take on the standard Hurricane kick, because Ryo does it a bit differently in Art of Fighting, so therefore, this is how Dan does it, right? And then we have the ultimate insult, the supers. Dan's super fireball? It's pathetic. It's just like a regular fireball. Who cares, right? Because Dan is an Art of Fighting character and therefore is bad and stupid. And then we have something like the Hisho Burai Ken. So this is the big insult, because this is specifically making fun of one of Ryo's moves, the Ryoku Ranbu, which is one of the most iconic moves in all of fighting game history. It is literally SNK's version of the Raging Demon. Ryo is the first person in the story of the SNK games, Art of Fighting, King of Fighters, to ever beat Geese Howard. And he beat him with this specific move. And then, hey, here comes Happy-Go-Lucky Dan, and he's got his own little silly version of it. And of course, Dan's got little silly versions of everything, right? Dan's not too serious. Dan's not the most serious character, which is why he's just very prone to taunting people, right? He's a joke. And by making him a joke, he's saying that Art of Fighting and its characters is a joke as well. So Dan is character assassination as a character. I think maybe that's a little much, right? Like, yeah, on paper anyways, Ryo's similar enough to some of the Street Fighter characters, but, you know, a little heavy-handed. Well, it also didn't help the fact that the year previous, the King of Fighters 94 came out, the first proper mainline King of Fighters game, and they sort of took their own little jab at Street Fighter as well. The main boss, Rugal, when Rugal beats someone, he basically makes a statue of you, right? To memorialize your defeat. And some of the statues, well, they may bear resemblance to some other characters you might know. Like, say, this guy here, who simply put is just very clearly Guile. No two bones about it. Now, in later years, we'd go on to laugh about this. Guile and Rugal would even have a special intro in Capcom vs. SNK 2 with this statue. But if you want to get malicious about it, you could say it was the first cheap shot and it was thrown by SNK. So Dan and his creation is simply punching back. So now the SNK logic is, well, we poked fun at you and you poked fun at us right back, so it's war. Enter Yuri Sakazaki. So Dan specifically makes fun of Ryo and Robert. Well, Yuri is Robert's love interest and Ryo's sister. She's already a pre-existing character. She's not necessarily new. She's in Art of Fighting 1 as like a story beat. Becomes playable in Art of Fighting 2 and uses the same Kyokugen Ryu style of karate as Ryo. And even out of the gate before any of the rivalry stuff, Yuri is a complete butthead. She's a total dumbass. She was always a silly character, but then she got drafted into the war. So Yuri's in Art of Fighting and also in the King of Fighters franchise since the start. Usually associated either with the Art of Fighting team or the women's team. And she has that moveset, you know, she has uppercuts, she has fireballs, all that kind of stuff. Starting with King of Fighters 96 though, something changed. Pretty much every year, Yuri gets a new way to clown on Street Fighter. Alpha 2 came out the previous year, adding Sakura, and Sakura has her own unique take on the various Shoto moves, including her unique Hurricane Kick. So starting with King of Fighters 96, Yuri's like, no, I got that Hurricane Kick too, why not? How about another classic move like Ken's Shoryu Reppa, his multiple uppercuts? Come King of Fighters 97, Yuri's like, no, I can do that too. So I can do Sakura's Hurricane Kick, I can do Ken's Shoryu Reppa. Now, keeping the pettiness flowing, this put Yuri in the crosshairs for Dan. Now, all of a sudden, Dan's X-Men vs. Street Fighter ending had a stand-in for Yuri, nameless, but stand-in for Yuri, and they're specifically and directly ripping on the Art of Fighting ending. And, well, you know, Yuri's like, hey, Ryo, that's actually our dad, right? Spoilers, I guess. But now that they're targeting Yuri, Yuri gets emboldened and keeps going on the references. Street Fighter 3, the first version, not Third Strike, which is what everyone thinks about. Street Fighter 3 launched in 1997. And with it came the debut of the legendary Shin Shoryuken, Ryu and Goken's take on just the big F-off uppercut. Everyone loves a good Shin Shoryuken. Come King of Fighters 98, Yuri's like, nah, Shin Shoryuken, that's my move actually, screw you. And it never stops. Like come King of Fighters 99, she starts busting out Sakura's overhead, because why not? More games down the road we keep taking, so from Ryu, she takes the mule kick. How about Shin Shoryuken? We took that, that's not enough. So look at the Denjin Hadoken, the kind that can dizzy the enemy. Yeah, we took that one in KOF 2003, complete with the whole charge mechanic and the fact that it dizzies if you get the full charge in, right? So Yuri doesn't really care where she's taken it from. In fact, in the King of Fighters 2001, they went as far to give Yuri the Shin Yuri Satsu. Yes, very much a play on the legendary Akuma Raging Demon. Same style of motion and everything, just complete ripoff. Hey, screw you. Our joke character now does your most famous super move. In fact, Yuri likes Akuma so much that over the years, that a lot of his stuff, like the demon flips, just became part of her base moveset. That's just part of the core Yuri experience now. Now, of course, by the early 2000s, now we're just frenemies more than rivals, right? And Dan and Yuri would actually finally get to face off against each other in Capcom vs. SNK. But that's not to say that Capcom ever forgot. So the next time Dan gets a turn at bat in Street Fighter 4, Dan's take on Ryo's Ryuku Ranbu gets upgraded for the modern day, and I think it always looked kind of snazzy, honestly. And we get the Hao Gadoken, his Ultra Gadoken, and it's very much a take on Hao Shokoken, which is what most of the Kyokugen Ryu users in the various SNK games use, as they're just big, mega, be-all, end-all fireball. Although in typical Dan fashion, doesn't exactly go full screen just to show, hey, maybe not as strong as what happens here in Street Fighter. Now, here's the thing though, in later years things change. Like someone like Dan, say Street Fighter 5 Dan, I would say he's not here to make fun of SNK anymore. He's actually straight up become an SNK tribute act. Like he's here to pay homage to SNK rather than to rip on them. Like Hao Gadoken started getting a lot better of a move, turns out. Gadoken actually got kind of the best it ever got in Street Fighter 5. The fact that you can charge it, hold it for like more range, making it like a valuable poke. There's even the infinite, which had to be patched out. Every now and then you'd get that red Gadoken, which was basically throw off the timing of the infinite. They gave him the Dan Retsuken, which is another direct like move from Art of Fighting, from King of Fighters. This is Ryo's move. The Zan Retsuken, which is many punches together, and Dan follows suit in a good way. And silly old Dan, legendary for his taunts, right? They gave him a mechanic from Garou, Mark of the Wolves, Fatal Fury, that specifically helps his game plan, right? Because he could taunt, right? He could attack you, cancel that into a taunt, and then cancel the taunt into another attack. So he could go Fierce, taunt into another Fierce. Like legitimately, he could build whole combo structures off of this. This is a mechanic that is in the original Garou Mark of the Wolves, and also will be returning in the upcoming Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. So if you ever learned this stuff back in the day, for Dan, it'll actually help you with Fatal Fury. And now we sort of wrap around back to where we started with, right? We're on Street Fighter 6, Dan hasn't shown up just yet. Yuri, still very much in King of Fighters 15, still ripping off some of Akuma's moves. SNK very much on a bit of a resurgence, and Capcom and SNK went from rivals back in the day to frenemies in the early 2000s to now just, hey, we're just playing good friends. And the collaborations that have already happened and the ones that are happening in the future to come are very much proof of that. It's fun to see companies just kind of poke at each other, right? This day and age, I feel like there'd be too much like sacrosanct if you just started at Raw today. There'd be so much complaining on social media if one company poked fun at another one. But in the realm of fighting games, ripping each other off, well, it's tradition. We'll get to experience those glory days again soon once they re-release Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2, so that's going to be really cool. And now, you know, with like actual SNK characters showing up in Street Fighter 6, Terry and Mai, maybe the next time Dan shows up, he might be throwing some fans like Mai, and maybe we'll have a Dan-specific unique take on the Buster Wolf. At this point, very literally anything's possible. Hell, maybe even, eventually, a Capcom vs. SNK 3. But yeah, in this video, I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea, just, you know, why the rivalry was a thing, right? You know, each company taking little pot shots with each other with the characters, Dan just specifically being born to make fun of what was perceived to be a direct ripoff of Ryu in Street Fighter, and then SNK just kind of weaponizing one of their already existing characters to directly crap on Capcom back. I always thought it was a fun little story, and of course, you know, we got there in the end, right? We're all friends now, but there was a time where, you know, you're just taking pot shots at each other. So if you didn't know, hey, now you do. And my friends, that is the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Capcom and SNK games.